In a stunning result in Vegas, Petr Yan takes down Merab Dvalishvili via unanimous decision to get revenge and claim the bantamweight crown. Unreal. Yan came into this fight at plus 320 to win it, and he becomes just the third two-time undisputed bantamweight champ in UFC history. Time now to welcome in CBS Sports combat writer Shakiel Mahjouri from Vegas as Petr Yan prevents Merab Dvalishvili from making history. Shaq, just pure dominance from Yan from start to finish in this one. What's your reaction to a result, to be frank, not a whole lot of people saw it coming, man?
So true, Chris. In a lot of ways, Petr Yan was an afterthought in this fight. This whole story was about Merab Dvalishvili doing something that none of the 3,000 plus fighters in the UFC's 32-year history could do, and that is defend a title 4 times in 1 calendar year. Considering the fact that Merab was only getting better from fight to fight, considering the fact that he already had a win over Petr Yan, we were convinced that history would repeat itself and Dvalishvili would do the unthinkable. But here comes Petr Yan, and what's most impressive is not only that he sort of returned to form, back to that guy in 2020 who won the bantamweight title, but he's noticeably better than that guy. We knew that if the fight stayed on the feet, Petr could give Merab trouble. We didn't know how much better his takedown defense got. Not only did Petr stop 22 of 24 takedown attempts, he also took down Merab 3 times, more times than Merab took him down. And most importantly, Merab Dvalishvili's ace in the hole is his cardio. He is the machine. He never tires. And even if you start strong, he will break you down. But the inverse was true, Chris. The first 2 rounds were actually pretty close. But as the fight got longer, Petr only got stronger. And if this is the guy who we can expect moving forward, we might have a new great in the bantamweight division.
All right, so I'm going to follow up on that. You talk about how we might have a new great in this division. What is next for Petr Yan? Because right now, he's got to feel like he's on top of the world, man.
Well, I think the trilogy fight is an easy sell considering the fact that they're 1-1 in their series. And while I'm usually not a guy who's super aggressive about the rematches, I do think Merab Dvalishvili fits the bill of someone who deserves it. I think it's normally best to keep those rematches for long, dominant champions in their division. Merab did have a couple close rounds there. He is, in many people's estimations, the greatest bantamweight of all time. I would be very comfortable if he got the rematch, and I am curious. 4 weight cuts in 1 year, that's a lot to put your body through. We saw how Kyle Bahalio, the middleweight contender, really suffered from cutting weight as a backup for the middleweight title fight and then fighting Nasruddin Imavov just a few weeks later. You can't help but wonder, not that Dvalishvili looked like he slowed down, but the fact that he couldn't break Yan, I think that's mostly a credit to Yan's cardio and how much he's improved there. But I would like to give Merab a much-deserved break, and then we can revisit this. If Yan wants a fight before that, well, Umar Nurmagomedov will be fighting on January 24th, UFC 324, the Paramount Plus debut of the UFC. Sean O'Malley will also be on that card. Sean has a win over Petr Yan. It was a very exciting 3-round fight. I think the beauty of having a new champion, especially in a division as stacked at bantamweight, is that you're opening yourself up to so many exciting matchups.
Now, Merab purely overwhelmed Yan in their first fight, but what do you make of the adjustments that Yan made this time around to make sure he didn't end up with the same result?
I think it really speaks to Petr's diligence and his commitment to the training process. I saw videos of him on UFC Embedded heading into fight week, and he was at a restaurant in Las Vegas, and he whips out the digital scale. He's putting the CBS on there. He's weighing out the greens. He took every necessary step and then some to make sure that he showed up in the best shape possible because, like I said, Merab Dvalishvili isn't necessarily the best striker. He is probably the best wrestler in the division, but Umar Nurmagomedov give him a run for his money there. What Merab had, and I emphasize had, over everyone in this division is that he was going to outlast you and he was going to make you slow down. If Jan can keep that pace for 5 rounds, it's going to spell disaster for every other contender.
100%, yeah, because Merab, he definitely looked like gas, or he looked gassed in this one, getting a taste of his own medicine from Petr Yan. Now, when it comes to, Merab Dvalishvili, right, you talked about he deserves a rest because he was trying to do something that nobody has been able to do, right, win it 4 times in a single calendar year. What do you think realistically is next for him when it comes to competition?
First and foremost, like you said, Chris, the man needs to take a break. I commend him for trying to do something that has never been done before, but he admitted those weight cuts are hard. When we spoke to UFC Hall of Famer and commentator Daniel Cormier on HQ on Thursday, he reminded us that Merab still has an old school method to weight cutting where a lot of fighters now work with the UFC Performance Institute to gradually get their weight down. Merab instead shows up on Wednesday and just completely starts fasting. No food, no water until he makes that weight. And while it works for him, maybe this was a little bit too much. So I hope he takes that rest. What's next for him depends on how long he takes that rest. Like I said, I think he's entitled to an immediate rematch, but if that doesn't line up, you have Umar Nurmagomedov probably as a solid option. But man, it's crazy because Merab's in this weird place where depending on how much time he wants to take off, it might leave the door open for O'Malley. It might leave the door open for Umar. And then Merab's in a place where he either needs to wait or kind of pick up whatever scraps are left.
Yeah, cannot wait to see how it all plays out, as he's definitely probably going to be licking his chops to get another chance at Petr Yan after this loss. Now, in the flyweight co-main event, not even 30 seconds into the first round, Alexandre Pantoja lands a head kick, then falls back and badly injures his left arm. The fight comes to an end. Van becomes the second youngest champion in UFC history at 24 years old, but not the way he wanted to, Shaq. We need an immediate rematch, right?
That's dependent on how quickly Alexandre Pantoja can recover from what appeared to be a fractured arm at the elbow. I couldn't hear the commentary, but the replays definitely showed something bending in a direction that it wasn't supposed to. Now, for Joshua Van, the curious part here is he basically took no damage. There was barely a fight. So if he's ready to turn around immediately, Tatsuro Taira coming off a big win over Brandon Moreno on the main card, he didn't get hit very much either. Obviously, you never know. These guys got to talk to the commission. Maybe they took a bad step. Maybe they hurt a ligament or something. But if Pantoja can't make the quick turnaround and they want to get Joshua Van back in action, Taira's perfect for it. They literally fought on the same card. The timeline could not work any better. But regardless of what happens next, whether it is Pantoja or it is Taira, when Pantoja comes back, there's no doubt about it. He's the second best flyweight of all time. He should get the immediate rematch.
So what are your thoughts, though, on everything that we saw?
It's so hard to gauge it because, like you said, here's Joshua Van at 24 years old, making history as the second youngest UFC champion in history, only behind perhaps the best of all time, John Jones. That's not bad company to be within. And if I'm him, I don't know how to utilize this moment because, first and foremost, props to Joshua Van. He goes to check on Alexandre Pantoja, who's just grimacing face first into the mat. And I love the cut that they did to Tatsuro Taira cage side with his mouth just covered in complete shock. But then he gets the belt wrapped around him. He's raising his arms. He's on his coach's shoulders, parading around like he just knocked out one of the best of all time. And that's not really the case. I don't take umbrage with what happened because there's this kind of fine line you have to balance between what Josh Van did and how unlikely it was, because I don't think it's fair, much like Chris Weidman checking Anderson Silva's leg kick, I don't think it's fair to completely discredit what Joshua Van did. He caught Pantoja's leg, he threw Pantoja to the ground, and then that is what caused Pantoja's arm to snap. So while it wasn't Joshua Van's primary intention, it is a secondary effect of something offensive that Joshua Van did. So I don't want to take anything away from him. It was his actions that caused the finish, but what it doesn't tell us is really who the better fighter is, right? And that's ultimately what we're here to find out. The championship belt should go around the waist of the very best in the world. So props to Joshua Van. He did his job. He is in the record books, and he should celebrate it, but we don't really know what would have happened if that fight had continued.
That's very true. Very true. But what we do know is Joshua Van is not lacking any sort of confidence at just 24 years old. Shakiel Mahjouri, we always appreciate the insight, man. Take care.